All right. Welcome, everybody, to Candle Face Chronicles podcast, episode 6. I'm here with Stacy, the world-renowned uh, remote viewer. And
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, we were here and we were discussing victim number 3. And I actually had a devoted fan last week send a text message and also call me and says, "Hey, what are you doing? I think I know what's going on." And he gave me some great hints. He gave me some great tips and hints, and I want to talk about that today. And since you were on the last episode where we talked about victim number 3, and I says, "Stacy, perfect person to talk about it again." So,
Excellent.
How are you doing today, Stacy?
I'm doing good, and then excited to see what we've got here.
Yeah. So, you students been keeping you busy?
Yeah, it's 24 hours. It's online around the world. Students message me literally all, day and night. So I'm kept pretty busy with that.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Okay, so I want to bring up some slides. Okay, so just to refresh your memory, Stacy, a few weeks ago we talked about victim number 3. Victim number 3 was really victim number 3 and 4 because it was 2 spirits who came to me that night. It wasn't until later I started having it to where if 2 came to me, I then started considering them as 2 different victims. But this one, I just considered those 2, one case, one victim. And it was a male and a female, appeared to be Black, maybe mid-20s, upper 20s, came to me, and then they started telling me about how they were killed by Candle Face followers. They came to me and they stood in my living room and very graphically told me their story. The male spoke most, but they went back and forth. He would speak, then she would complete the sentence a little bit, then he would then speak and she'll complete it. So they both went back and forth. To start off with, I always assumed that they lived in Houston because I live in Houston. And they said that they traveled from here and went to Austin. And so I made the assumption that they were from Houston. Mm-hmm. And they discussed how they went to Austin to visit his childhood friend. And when they got to his house, they put their bags away and they hit the streets of 6th Street. 6th Street's the big party street. Dozens of clubs, tens of thousands of people on the weekends. And they just went out and had a good old time drinking. And eventually they made their way back to the house that they're going to spend the night, his childhood friend. And as they were hanging out, smoking pot, drinking more beer, the conversation of Candle Face came up. And the friend, the one that lived in the house, was saying Candle Face visits him and gives him instructions, and they were laughing at him. The friend and the girlfriend was saying, "Oh, you're crazy. You're crazy." Really just making fun of him. Wouldn't stop. And he eventually gets so tired of being made fun of, he leaves. He leaves his own house and doesn't come back for 15 minutes. And the girlfriend's like, "Hey, where did he go?" And he's all, "Don't worry, my friend gets like that." But he comes back 15 minutes later with 3 other friends, one carrying a machete and one carrying a blue tarp. And his friend, the guy with the tarp puts the tarp down in the kitchen dining room area, probably one big kitchen dining room area, and puts down the tarp and says, "Hey, get on the tarp. Make cleanup easier." And he's like, no way, I'm not getting on that tarp. So he tries to run through the back door. Maybe the front door was blocked, but he tries to go through the kitchen area, but slips on a little rug, falls, and then they grab him and they yank him back to the kitchen. And his friend uses a cattle prod to zap him. They put him on the blue tarp while his girlfriend is screaming. And they use the machete and chops his arms off and his legs off, but he doesn't die, surprisingly. And so they do the same thing to the girlfriend, telling the girlfriends like, man, your boyfriend is a piece of work. He tried to leave you. He tried to run through the back door and leaving you in the house. And so they axed her up too, and put them on the blue tarp, wrapped them up, and put them in the male victim's own trunk, and drove a mile, 60 minutes away is what he estimates. Doesn't know the direction because he and his girlfriend are in the trunk, and goes for 60 minutes and then opens up the trunk, and then they're thrown into a gravel pit. And they're asking me to find their bodies and to identify the killer. So they can be put at rest and have justice by the killer being identified. So that's the rundown. That is what the spirit, the two different spirits have told me. And
before we get further, we should probably say hi to the side pieces you got here.
Okay, let me go there. There's so many different buttons that I got to deal with. So Mandy says, hi, guys. Let me put that on there. And
Danny Marie. I see spirits.
Yeah. Damien is everywhere. He just doesn't sleep. He's 24 hours. Yeah.
This is Laura. Paranormal theory.
And while we go on, if you have any kind of theory, let me know. That's what this is all about. This is a collaborative effort for all of us to work together. I don't have all the answers, apparently, because there's been 36 victims, and I think I've been able to identify only 6. So if we're all working on this together, we could solve more than just 6.
All right.
Sorry about that. So what do we know about the 2 victims? We know that one is a male and the other's female, boyfriend, girlfriend. They mention in the testimony that they both drink beer and smoke marijuana. And so these are little hints that I'm trying to get to try to determine who they are. Both don't believe in Candle Face, and they both made fun of killer number 1 for his belief in Candle Face. So remember, there's 4 killers. There was the best friend, or at least a childhood friend, and then 3 others. And it doesn't appear that victim number 2 knew any of them. Okay, so what do we know about the killers? All 4 are male, according to the testimony. The first one there, killer number 1, is a childhood friend of victim number 1, lives in a house in Austin, Texas, according to the male victim. Drank beer, smoked marijuana, believes in Candle Face, and a little hint is he owns or at least has access to a cattle prod because he's the one that actually zapped. Killer number 2, since killer number 1, when he got upset, he left for 15 minutes and came back. That means he had to walk, if he continuously walked, 7.5 minutes and 7.5 minutes back. So more than likely, killer number 2 lives within 15 minutes, 7.5 to 15 minutes away, or at least was staged in the area, and has access or owns a machete, and is likely the actual killer, the guy with the machete. And the other 2 killers, 3 and 4, probably live or staged within a 15-minute walk, 7.5 to 15 minutes. One has, used a handkerchief to gag the victims. And that could have been either 3 or 4. It wasn't very clear in the testimony. We know the setting is in Austin because the both of these spirits mentioned it. I don't know the date. They just mentioned it occurred at night. Killer number one's house is probably a combined kitchen dining area, only because he mentioned kitchen dining room. So it's probably a small house, nothing big. It could even be maybe even a duplex, and it has probably a loose rug, maybe a toss rug. It could even be in the kitchen, where you wash dishes, that type of rug, and he slipped on that. And another good assumption is that maybe the back door is in the kitchen area or beyond the kitchen, because he tried to get away. And he could also have been familiar with this house, knowing that there was a door back there. Most people's going to have a back door anyways, or he just panicked and just tried to flee. And we also know that the victim's car was used to transport both bodies. So the killer used the victim's own car to transport their own bodies. This is what we know from the testimonies of the two spirits. Let's see. Was the machete recovered? No, the machete was not recovered.
Now, wasn't this? Am I confusing another case that the killers had an interaction with the police, and the police didn't see what they needed to see?
No, this is the same case. I'm glad you brought that up. But according to the male spirit, he did say police did go to that person's house, but there was blood in the dining room, kitchen area, but the police did not see it. And It was because the machete, I guess, cut through the blue tarp and some of the blood got in there, but they just didn't see it. And he was saying if the police were to revisit, they would be able to see that blood. So good catch, Stacy. Yeah, that was important. Possible area of operations. So I'm looking at a 60-minute drive from North Austin, South Austin, because I don't know where this really occurred. So where can you meet after 60 minutes of driving? Of course, I believe this is going to be at night, so you're going to be able to drive further at night because there's not as much traffic. Going north and south, which is north is on the top part of the screen, you're going to be able to go faster, and so therefore further in 60 minutes because there's highways. There's not really highways going east and west, so the amount of distance you can travel east and west will be less going east and west. They mentioned gravel pits. So these are the gravel pits within a 60-minute drive in Austin. Now, gravel pit, what really is a gravel pit, really? Because my assumption is when he was saying it was a big, large gravel pit, like you can't see my cursor, but it's north of Austin, Round Rock, Pflugerville, about 45 minutes north of Austin. There's some pretty good gravel companies that make little rocks out of big rocks, and there's several around Austin. But a gravel pit could also be a construction site, or it could be a demolition site, or it could be whatever. I don't know what a gravel pit, but I made the assumption that it's going to be gravel pits, larger gravel pits. I got this stuff from a website saying, and because I Googled gravel pits in the vicinity of Austin, and this is what I got. And I just posted these on this map. So if the spirit is correct, their bodies would be located in one of these gravel pits. And if you look at the north one, probably every star is probably two gravel pits because they're so close together. So if you were to zoom in, you'll see two stars where there's just one star. Let's see. These spirits are telling their, what is that? Massacre?
Murder.
Murder? Okay. Yeah, that's what I believe it is. There could be old wells covered all over. But
Well, I
it
don't
seems
know
like
how in Texas, whether this is true or not, but in the Midwest, where there are a lot of gravel pits too, uh, the water table itself is not very far down. And a lot of these gravel pits will hit the water table, and the whole pit gets essentially filled with a spring. So they have to abandon the pit, and you basically have a mini lake or a large pond that was man-made because of the digging. And
yeah,
a lot of times bodies end up in those. Naturally, not necessarily for murders, but because gravel pits, the springs are so icy cold, kids will go swimming in them and they'll hit that icy cold water in the spring and
yeah,
they'll cramp up and drown. They're very dangerous to swim in that regard, but
yeah.
they're also dumping spots for, bodies. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of the open water like that in west parts of Austin.
okay.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. Um, so did Get Haunted help this case? I think it did because it was a tip from somebody who watches my podcast that called me up and says, or sent me a text message, hey, give me a call. So I called him up, and it's Mr. Smo, who I interviewed last week. He's the person that claims to be a disciple of Candleface. That he used to travel and go to AA meetings and talk to people down on their luck about Candleface and try to get them to understand who Candleface is, accept Candleface, and Candleface will take their pain away. If they did not confess their belief in Candleface, Candleface would either haunt them to the point where they will end up committing suicide, or she would just kill them outright. This is what he did. He did this for many years. He's probably listening right now, Mr. Smo. He's a very interesting fellow. Gave me some pretty good hints. One of the things he told me to do is maybe not spend so much time trying to get the paranormal community to help me. I should be focusing on doing it myself, which I don't quite agree with. Mostly because, like you, Stacy, you've been doing this for 15 plus years. I don't want to wait 15 plus years to learn how to do remote viewing. I would rather have those that already know how to do it help me. I don't want to learn this.
If he's a self-confessed psychological predator, like what you just described, he's going to want you to, segregate you and isolate you to, do this on your own. So you're more vulnerable in that regard. If you have a support group that's helping you, that makes it more difficult to actually go after you if that's what his real goal is. If he's still doing that kind of thing.
No, he's an older guy. I think he's 84. He's between 74 and 84. He's told me different ages. But I'm thinking by the way that he looks, the way he talks, his demeanor, he's up there. He's around 84. Where's the old wells covered over? Well, I don't know where it has anything to do with covered wells. I think it's more pits. And I'll tell you why now. After listening to Mr. Smo telling me that I need to do some research, and he told me that he found some articles that sound very similar to these two people, Sidney Taylor and Christian Gibson from Houston. These two people apparently went to Austin to visit one of Sidney's friends and never made it back to Houston. And he gave me a few articles, and I went and I looked, and I was like, I absolutely think that the two spirits that came to me are these two people. Of course, they don't necessarily look like them, because all I saw were shadows at this time. Victim number 3, all I saw was shadows, not very much detail. So could it possibly be these two? So before I go further, let me share my screen here. If I just typed in Sidney Taylor missing, there is plenty of articles of these two people coming from Houston. And then one particular
one,
one.
like they charged one in one of the headlines.
What's
Texas
that?
man charged with capital murder in the death
Oh yeah,
cell.
yeah. I'll get with that one. I'll get with that in a second. Get rid of. Okay, so this was an August 30th, 2023 article. So just last year. I read a little bit of it. Let me get rid of these ads. Austin Police, Austin, Texas, needs the public's help getting key evidence in a 7-year-old cold case, which is 8 years now. April 2nd, 2016 was the last time Sidney Taylor and Christian Gibson were seen alive. The two friends had traveled from Houston to Austin in Taylor's black 2010 Dodge Charger. They planned to stay the weekend at a man named Gerald Hemphill. After arriving at Hemphill's home at around 11 p.m. on April 1st, they dropped off their bags and headed out for the night. At approximately midnight, the two stopped at this address there and picked up an acquaintance named Harvey Hootie Cyphers. The trio then drove to the Landing Strip, an adult entertainment club in Southeast Austin. At 2 a.m. on April 2nd, surveillance video showed the three walking out of the club. That was the last time Taylor and Gibson was seen. Shortly afterwards, Austin police questioned Cyphers. Police say things didn't add up. The suspect's cell phone evidence and his statements did not match what he was telling us, and as far as the location and what he had done after the disappearance, Austin Police Department said. According to investigators, financial recordings show Cypher brought cleaning supplies and fresh towels. The Dodge Charger the trio was riding in was found days later in Houston at the 2400 block of Milam Street, within walking distance to a megabus station. Police learned Cyphers had purchased a ticket to travel back to Austin. Police spotted blood stains in Cyphers' bathtub and living room. Biological evidence showed discovered also in the Dodge Charger. But to this day, investigators have yet to find the bodies of Taylor and Johnson. Key evidence will be the location of the bodies or any kind of evidence that will point out to lead us to what happened to the bodies. The night of their disappearance, cell phone records show tower activity in the middle of a rural area tract of land near Lockhart in Caldwell County, which is 60 miles south of Austin. Police searched the gravel pit for days but found nothing. However, the landowner said that Cyphers was the only one of only a few people who had access to that property. And that's Cyphers. Earlier this year, Cyphers was in prison after he was found guilty of tampering with evidence, but police need to find the bodies of Taylor and Gibson in order to pursue stronger charges. So very similar, but not perfect. So I would have to say, even though the two victims do sound very similar, but we can't at this point, and we're not law enforcement anyways, we can't say this is the guy that did it. You know, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to say according to what I heard from these two spirits, it sure sounds like it's the two victims.
Yeah, that's quite logical in what you're seeing here, because you're hitting all of the bullet points. You know, the gravel pit, the distance. Is it north or south of Austin? The gravel pit.
South. Lockhart is about an hour south of Austin. It's right during the bottom of those little stars I had on the map. Is like the furthest distance that you could go. And apparently one of the four people, one of those four, actually worked there. And he's the guy that brought bought the ticket from Houston back to Austin. So here's a little video. Let me know if you can hear the sound. I'm not sure how this is going to work. This is a actual media, a news media report.
Is there a little volume? I can't hear anything.
Can you hear it?
No, can't hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear that?
Nope. Slide the little speaker to see what the volume is at. With your pointer next to the play button. The play button.
Over here.
Yeah. Is that all the way over?
Yeah, all the way over. So maybe I'll just put my microphone next to the speakers then. See if that helps. Can you hear that?
No.
All right. So that ain't going to work. All right. Well, all right. Actually, I got another idea. So I saved it just in case.
The Monse murder trial will begin for a man accused of killing two Houston area friends. The pair went to a festival in Austin and never came back home. Harvey Cyphers has been charged in the case, although the bodies have never been found. It's a case Lauren Tallarico has been following. Lauren, you spoke with one of the families tonight. There are still a lot of unanswered questions.
Yes, it goes without saying. It has been really hard for Sydney Taylor's family. Not only do they have no idea why this happened, they also don't know what happened to his body.
It's almost broken my family to pieces.
Life darkened for Amanda Ware and her family the day her big brother disappeared nearly 7 years ago.
We want answers to know what exactly happened during that evening.
On April 1st, 2016, Sydney Taylor, a 35-year-old father of four, went to Austin with his friend Chrislyn Gibson for a music festival. Investigators say they were last seen that night outside a club with this man, Harvey Cyphers, described as an acquaintance, now charged with their murders after evidence of a crime scene was found at his home. But there's still no motive, and their bodies were never found.
My brother is not trash. He's disappeared. He's been murdered. He was somebody that was important. HBCU alumni, educator, football coach, played football, father. All of these things my brother was.
Cyphers' murder trial is set to begin in January.
Hoping that our justice and legal system doesn't fail us in this trial.
They also want to lay their father, brother, and son to rest.
Because they came on this earth in a righteous way. They need to leave with respect in a righteous way.
Sydney's family is holding a vigil for him on Saturday. Those details are on KHOU.com. Meanwhile, anybody with information about what happened in this case should call authorities. I'm Lauren Tallarico, KHOU 11 News.
All right. So let me.
Are the victims from Houston?
These two were from Houston, yes.
Okay. Because the sister had a Xavier University, Louisiana, shirt on. Didn't know whether it was actually from Louisiana or not.
Well, maybe she lives in Louisiana. Houston's not that far away, so there could be some connection. So what are the similarities between what the spirits told me and the news reports? And so this is my battle damage assessment. What are the similarities? My grade, or how well these two people, these two match up. So Sidney Taylor, the entity, just calling him an entity for lack of a better term, according to the spirit, from what I could tell, was a black male. Childhood friends with killer number one, his childhood friend. Reports say he's a black male, and he was a childhood friend for victim number one. So both match up. Christian Gibson, black female, according to the spirit's testimony, was victim number one's girlfriend. And the news reports say the same thing. Black female, Sidney's girlfriend. The victim's residence, according to the testimony, was likely Houston, only because they said that we traveled from here to Austin. Here, I assumed was Houston. And the reports say that they lived in Houston. And the setting of the murders, Austin, Texas, according to the spirits, and so did the reports. The date was never asked. I never asked. I didn't even have the capability to ask questions at that time. But according to the reports, it was April 2nd, 2016, 8 years ago. And so far, out of the 36, this may even be the most recent of the spirits that have came to me, but I don't really know that for sure. But this is definitely seems like the most recent. The killer's residence. Here's where things are wrong. The spirit's testimony says it was in his childhood friend's home. But according to the reports, it wasn't. It was in killer number two's home. Because you remember, according to the news reports, when they arrived in Austin, they first went to his friend's home, and then they went to a friend's acquaintance home to continue to drink and smoke pot. So the spirit was wrong, or I just wrote it down wrong, which is unlikely. But to me, it could just be the spirit, just like humans. When we're alive, we're not going to have all the facts. We're going to have things wrong. But when he's telling me this, she didn't correct him. The girlfriend, hey, no, it was not at his house. It was at the other guy's house. They just both agreed. The victim's car, according to the testimony, it was his car that was used to drive to the gravel pit. And the report said it was a Dodge Charger. I have a Dodge Charger, and there's plenty of space in that trunk. Multiple bodies in a Dodge Charger trunk. Mode of transportation. Again, it's victim number one car and placed in the trunk. And the report said the same thing. It was the Sidney's Dodge Charger, and where the bodies were in the trunk. The spirit's testimony said that they were buried in a gravel pit. And the reports said it likely in a gravel pit, because other reports said that cadaver dogs did smell human decomposition, but they could not find an actual body. And the likely killer actually had access to that gravel pit. So there's a lot of coronation to that gravel pit. And the distance to the gravel pit, 1 hour drive. And then the reports also 1 hour drive. But then within an hour's drive, there's 20 gravel pits. But only one of them does the reports actually say one of the killers had access to. So very likely the gravel pit at the location where this guy actually had access to is where these bodies are located, or at least was located. Maybe they dumped him there and then he went back and put him in a new location. So
depends on if he had access to equipment. because if they have access to excavating equipment, they can, put it in a pretty deep hole and cover it up. Or in, like I said, a spring that was recently created. The go-to typically.
Right. But another thing too is, it could just been on the side of the gravel and just put gravel on top of them just long enough to get rid of the bodies for them to come back later and move the bodies to a more permanent location. And maybe that's why cadaver dogs smelt bodies, but didn't find the bodies because they were no longer there. Or they could still be there. I don't even know the size of this gravel pit. Some of them are massive. They, as a kid, the ones in North Austin, they were there when I was living there 40 years ago, and they're still there, productive today.
Have you done a Google Earth view of it? Have you seen it?
Right. Yeah. All the ones in that Lockhart area are pretty big. And maybe they grow through times too. Maybe as time goes, they just start growing, buying more property outside. So if that's the case, it will take some significant amount of research to find out what was the size of it in 2016. And if there's any kind of police report saying where did the dogs smell it, and I'm sure that was the case. I'm sure they have that.
Yeah, that's your first clue right there on, where it could be.
Right. So the question is, so what? As we were talking a little earlier, what happens if I figure this out, right? If this is the two victims, what happens next? As I mentioned in other podcasts, I just can't go to the loved one's home and says, "Hey, guess what? I think your spirits or your loved ones came to me." That they'll slam the door. I'm sure the cops would do the same thing. So what do I do? And how can a remote viewer help me with this?
Well, if all of these things are true, and we can determine that too, a remote viewer would first do what we call an anchor session. It's a general remote viewing session on the situation. So we've basically narrowed down these people, and you can do that relatively easy with their photographs. You don't have to use their names or anything weird, search terms or anything like that. You can use their photographs in order to determine their demise. And from that, you have an anchor session. You then turn around and run what we call associative remote viewing that uses sort of like an algebra. You have A or B equations in whenever you're doing something. It's a variable, and you can determine on a grid and triangulate north and south, east and west based off of true and false essentially questions. If it's this, then it's east. If it's that, then it's west. And you bisect that, and you do run those sessions over and over and over again, and it's really labor intensive. But what you can get all the way down to around 30 feet to determine GPS wise where something is at.
Now we run into the problem with, do we accuse this guy? Because we don't know if this guy is the one that really did it. We could be wrong. And is it really up to us to say, oh, this is the killer? Because to say these are the two victims is one thing, but to say, hey, we think we know who the killer is, we don't want to accuse somebody based off of two spirits coming into my living room. Even though things do look alike, but.
And at the same time, finding the killer and accusing the killer isn't really your job. The spirits want that to happen, but they don't want you. That's not really your job. Your job would be to find the remains, turn in the remains, have the CSI do all, and determine who, based off of the evidence that is, allowable in court. Testimony from spirits is not allowable evidence.
Yeah.
So you want to have this completely untainted in that regard. You can find the clues that law enforcement then can turn around and use.
Right. Yeah. There are a lot of similarities, but there are things that just doesn't jive. So with your experience, do spirits lie or just not know? Maybe they don't know exactly but it's hard not to know where they were killed. Was it this guy's house or was it the other guy's house?
It can be, especially in a trauma situation. You get discombobulated on all kinds of different things. Clarity doesn't really happen until after the fact thing is presented to them. They may be in a state of limbo themselves, not knowing where they're at right now, not knowing what's really going on. It may be they think they're in a dream. That kind of thing's going on. Spirits can lie when they're completely aware. I mean, they're people. People lie. They're not that. You don't turn into an angel or a demon just based off of, crossing over. You're still a person. It's your personality and who you are at your core is going to come through. But you can be confused. That's very common. Not knowing where you're at and what's going on. And since there's no relation in time, they may not even know how long it's been. To them, this happened yesterday.
Yeah. So Paranormal Theory, I don't think I've heard of them. Do you have any theories on this case? If you do, just type it in there. I do want to experiment with something. I haven't seen other podcasts do. I want to get a phone number so people can call in and ask questions or give theories, like a radio show. I like to do something like that. I think that would make it so much easier.
Send them the link. They want to get on the show. They send them the link, like the StreamYard.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yep. Rob and Sarah do that all the time. Somebody wants to talk, Rob shoots them the link and they pop in.
Yeah, I could do that as well, because this is how it works. It's all about collaboration. There's a lot of good talent people here, and always has good insights. Like you just said something here. Let's see. What do you say now? How do the families feel that you linked deaths to loved ones being tormented by Candle Face? Probably not good. This is the first thing that is going public is this podcast, but I wouldn't think they would like it. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't want somebody to come and knock on my door. So, that's part of what is bothering me is like, should I even take this on? But, when you have these things that are so similar.
You've got some inside information too that can be leveraged. You have a suspect who's already in prison for something. They had to keep him in prison on something. He tampered with evidence, so they're putting him in prison for that, even though they know or strongly believe he's a murderer. They just need the evidence for that. What you know is that these people are disciples of Candle Face. If you were to write him a letter, just a regular letter, and ask him about his experience with Candle Face, and basically question him on that and get him basically become a pen pal, you would be able to get confirmation not only that that part of it is true, but you would be able to ferret out information that nobody else has been able to get.
Yeah.
Based off of the dead telling you. You can get him to essentially give you clues and confess.
Yeah. So Damien there agrees with you. But the person that I interviewed twice already, Mr. Snow, I don't think he's one of the followers that kill on her behalf. I don't think so. He's never mentioned anything like that. It's more about him going to AA meetings, to prostitutes and
right.
people like
I understand
that.
that. I was actually referring to Mr. Cipher, the guy who's actually in prison.
Oh, I see. That's what you're saying. Yeah. It maybe by letting them know of this, that could freak them out so much. And, oh, this guy is the devil. And then he confesses up. I don't know.
Well, it could make him clam up too. It basically doing it's easier to attract flies with honey than it is vinegar. If you were to basically build a relationship with him correspondence wise, he would be able to, talk about this thing that apparently he's so, passionate about, Candle Face. He would want to talk about this. If you're willing to kill, that's, pretty passionate, sense what you've got going on. So he may be willing to talk in an actual letter, whereas before, he wouldn't want to talk to the police about it or anything of that kind. You can get more information than the police are actually even thinking about, even considering.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I can consider doing. For another case, victim number 11, I do want to talk about this case sometime soon. I've had some Houston area personnel, a paranormal group. I won't say the name until they give me the okay. They've done a lot of research on victim number 11. And it sounds very similar to a real case called Roxanne, or a victim named Roxanne. And they put something together, and they even try to contact Roxanne's family. They didn't want to have anything to do with them. They tried to contact the police department that's running the case, and they didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah. So would you, Stacy, be interested in doing like a remote viewing to try to see what you can find, what you can see with this case? Maybe you could see
Roxanne or the victim's number 3.
Victim number 3, the one that we're talking about today, or maybe Roxanne as well.
Well, Sydney and I can run sessions on Sydney and Chrisland. That part is easy. The pit that I would want to get a GPS location of the actual pit. So, because it is so labor intensive to get exact locations on anything down to 30 feet. You want to work with the space as little as possible. You don't want to start with the state of Texas and then whittle it down. Yeah. Because that takes a long time and it's a lot of effort. If you have
I could get you to the pit, but I don't think I could get you within 30 feet.
No. That part would be up to me. Getting the pit, if the pit is, 3 football fields, I don't know, whatever it is. Yeah. That's a lot easier to break down in triangulating than, like I said, the state of Texas. You essentially, it's kind of like scrying, but you're using actual associative remote viewing in order to whittle it down piece by piece, and then going back and doing it again. You have to do it at least, hit it the same spot 3 times before it to be confidence high.
Yeah.
So it's the smaller area to work with, the better. So I would want to get that GPS location to start, and then go from there.
Yeah. It's likely going to be one of those bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 or so stars at the very bottom.
Okay. Get a
Yeah,
Google
but
image,
I think
things like that.
no, but I think I could get that. I'm sure in one of the reports will have the actual burn or the gravel pits, and then from there I can get a GPS, a center point GPS geolocation to that gravel pit.
Yeah, dead center in the middle of the pit. Then literally you bisect it north or south, east or west, in the remote viewing sessions. It's basically yes or no, but you're using east and west and north and south with every run of the session that you do. But you have to have an anchor session first, and that's I would run that. It takes about 2 weeks of doing 4 sessions a day, because that's all you can really do is 4 sessions, and then that essentially every day for 2 weeks, and that's where you get it. So it's
if you're able to do that, so we could just work offline. I could get you that geolocation, center mass, and then you can work your magic. And this is what I'm talking about. Not why should I try to do it all myself, learn everything myself, when there's plenty of very good talent in the Get Haunted network that we could all feed off of. And like Damien here saying that he wants to go after Candle Face, knock the victims regarding the Ouija board. So absolutely. My whole Candle Face Chronicles has 2 parts. You have the Lost Souls and Genesis. Originally, it was supposed to just be Genesis. I wanted to research who is Candle Face. What was she before she was human, or if she was ever human?
mm-hmm.
So I wanted to look into that, and then as I was doing the research, that's when I started having these spirits come to me. So then it took my focus off of her and brought it to these lost souls. So that brings up a whole nother question. Were these lost souls just to distract me from Candle Face? Maybe I was digging too deeply, and this maybe these spirits, these lost souls, don't exist. It's Candle Face just messing with me, like she messes with so many others, and just making me run around in circles to keep me away from her. But if that's the case, why don't Candle Face just kill me, like she's killed so many others? Why, maybe this just is how she wants to play with me, like she did when she was a child, or when I was a child. So there's still a lot of questions. I still believe that these are real spirits that came to me, because now there seems to be 7 of them that are real. And just like when I was a kid, I wondered if Candle Face was right, but I would always see those handprints on the windows, on my bathroom mirror. And that was her way of letting me know that she's real. So maybe this is her way of letting me know she's real by giving me these real spirits, but to keep me away from her. So maybe I need to focus more on her, not just these spirits.
Well, on that front, you got to know what you're dealing with, because right now Candle Face is your coined term for her, whereas other people may have a different name and under different understanding. Mythology throughout time, may be a different kind of spirit we were looking at from before. I sent you a link to those, kind of spirits that were like that. Lorna, that kind of spirit don't match perfectly with the Candle Face. Most burned spirits are male in nature, so could be Banshee, melted face. Banshees are water spirits, so that water logging, flesh falling off in waters typically it. But Banshees don't hang out in the middle of the desert in Texas. They're more of a, like I said, a water creature.
Yeah. Well, of the 36 victims, I think 6 of them are drowning victims, at least 6.
Okay.
So maybe that has something to do with it. I know there's rumors of a serial killer in Austin, and several of the victims have mentioned about being pushed or tricked into going into the water. One was was making fun of Candle Face just hours before, and was walking home along the water's edge and saw a little girl drowning, and he jumps in there. It wasn't a little girl, it was Candle Face, and then he drowns her, or she drowns him. So it could be, Banshee. I don't know, or all these.
That's a Lorna. The Spanish spirit Lorna, she's the one that actually does that. Her big thing is, when you hear her crying from far away, she's near, and when she's near, it's far away. It sounds like it's a long distance. So it's one of these things where just by how you hear her determines whether or not she's actually near or far.
Wow.
But she does it to children primarily, but she does it to adults who see her, because seeing her is like you're being marked. She will come after you once you've seen her, whether you're an adult or a child.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was a quick hour. That was a whole hour already.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of this podcast is to be interactive, and it's good that I got people coming in here like Damien and giving me his hypothesis, and that's how this works. I would have never even thought about who these victims were, if it wasn't for somebody that was watching the podcast to let me know. And this is the idea. This is how it works. I got Wade. Candle Face is a male, inhuman, demonic that has been manipulating people for centuries. I know this sounds silly, but will lead you astray to not see the real story going on here. So I talked to Wade extensively a few times, once on the phone and text messages back and forth. I didn't really want to get into what Wade told me about Candle Face because I didn't want to mischaracterize it or say something incorrect. One of these days, I would like to have Wade on. Brilliant man, had some great insights, but I didn't want to mischaracterize. That's not what I'm about. So I wanted to make sure I get it right. So Wade, if you'll ever like to come on in.
Yeah, you should have him on. Yeah, you should have Wade on because he's probably got a litany of demonic spirits that he knows by name that would fit the description that you're talking about, which is what I'm trying to say. Before you do anything going directly against Candle Face, you need to know what you're going up against.
Right. Okay, so my time is up. I don't want to take somebody's time, whoever's next. So, Stacy, I do appreciate it. Always good to talk to you. Pick your brain and pick the brains of everybody else out there, including Damien.
Excellent.
He does not sleep. He's always on one of these podcasts, and I think that's awesome. So,
yeah, thank you for having me on. This was great.
yeah, no problem.
You know, it actually, brought some clarity from the last time.
Yeah.
Because these people match
hopefully
better than the 80% I'm usually working with.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had a spirit come to me in the last few weeks. I've had this before where they'll not show up for 2, I think 3 weeks is the max. And then they all come to me after that. Because I start getting worried. It's like, am I not helping? And so therefore they're blowing me off. And then they come to me again. So hopefully I'm just in that rut right now and they'll start coming back. But definitely I need to pick up the pace and help these guys. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right,
we can, work on that. So
yeah.
Great to be here.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Peace.